Hi class, my name is Kara Tibidawiza, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Chapter 23, which is Broadband and Home Networks. So if you want to go ahead and open up that PowerPoint, we have our cover page here, and we're going to move to Slide 2. Why study broadband and home networks? Well, one of the biggest reasons that this is such an interesting topic is that it's intrinsically linked to our communication, entertainment, and work needs. Secondly, it is being increasingly used to send, receive, and track distribution of our nation's energy consumption. And third, it is estimated to create hundreds of thousands of new jobs, shape our educational system, and administer high-quality health care. So let's move on to the second slide here. Tim Berners-Lee. He created the World Wide Web just 2 decades ago. In addition to surfing the web, the internet allows us to share information with one another, just as I am here giving this presentation with you today. So let's move on to slide 4, broadband. Broadband, also considered high speed, and this is where in the US the FCC considers Tier 1 high-speed internet to be speeds that are greater than or equal to 768 kilobytes per second and have a upload speed of less than 1.5 millibytes per second. Speeds are actually much faster in the United States though, and they're increasing with new technologies. Currently the US ranks 31st internationally with average download speeds of 12.7 millibytes per second, and South Korea leads with an amazing 32.58 millibytes per second upload or download speeds. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD in France, requires connection speeds of 256 kilobytes per second, and the International Telecommunication Union recognizes connection speeds between 1.5 and 2 millibytes per second. So let's go ahead and move on to the second slide. The Telecommunications Act of 1966. This gave broadband service providers the ability to be telephone companies, cable operators, public utilities, and private corporations. The Telecommunications Act was signed into law to promote competition and reduce regulation, bringing down prices and increasing quality service for American telecommunication consumers, while fostering prompt deployment of new technologies. All right, moving on to slide 6. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about DSL, the digital subscriber line. And now this sort of technology supplies broadband coverage over telephone lines. The most typical kind of broadband internet access that we see today is the asymmetrical DSL, or ADSL. It's the most widely used. It has download speeds that are actually faster than upload speeds, and this is because people typically download more than they upload, and they typically download larger amounts of data. The ADSL is a distance-sensitive technology, so the further your home is away from that central office, the slower your connection speed is going to be. Typically, speeds will be download of up to 1.5 millibytes per second and upload speeds from 64 kilobytes per second to 640 kilobytes per second. All right, moving on to the next slide. Well, here we can get more of a visual representation of our DSL access multiplexer. Now, this is how we get our ADSL service. So we have our customer's home here with our modem, which splits from our cable and our broadband service. And then we have our 2-wire telephone line that goes all the way back to the public telephone network exchange building, where the DSLAM provides your internet and your telephone network. All right, so moving on, let's talk about how this information reaches us. We're going to talk about fiber to the node and fiber to the home. Now first, fiber to the node, often referred to as VDSL or very high bitrate DSL, has faster speeds of up to 50 millibytes per second downstream and 20 millibytes per second upstream. The fiber optic cable runs from the central office to the neighborhood node. And from there, the copper wires, the traditional wires, will run from the node to the individual residences. Now, fiber to the home is just that. It is a fiber optic network that connects straight to the residence, and it has speeds of excess 1 gigabyte per second. Now, this is the network of the future. We're going to see more of this as technology keeps on coming through and updates happen in neighborhoods, and as well as in the newer built neighborhoods as well. Okay, so let's move on to cable modem. Cable modem. 15% of U.S. residents receive their service from cable providers. An upgrade to hybrid fiber coaxial cable networks made possible for cable television operators to offer broadband internet access. Now, the download data actually fits onto the space of a single channel. So that's only a 6 MHz bandwidth space. And upload requires only 2 MHz bandwidth space, so not even an entire channel here. Continuing on, a little more on slide 10 about the cable modem. So the cable modem uses a standard called Data over Cable Service Interface Specification, or DOCSIS. Now, unlike DSL, cable internet users share bandwidth. The usable speed for individual subscribers depends upon the number of simultaneous users. And unlike DSL, the signal travels to the cable ends, or the head end, via the cable modem termination system, or the CMTS. Now, from the head end, the signal travels to the cable node in a given neighborhood, and a coaxial cable then runs from the neighborhood node to the home. So just to specify here, I'm not sure if that was confusing or not. So this is like DSL here. We're really going to see in the next slide, we'll take a visual look here, just like DSL. So we're going to have our central head end, or hub, where the information is going to come through, our digital transport to the node, and then from the node to individual residences. So this is for the cable modem termination system. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, which is satellite. Now, satellite, our modem is connected to a small satellite dish that communicates with the provider's satellite. While satellite can't deliver the bandwidth of cable or DSL, speeds are a great improvement over dial-up. And this sort of technology is perfect for people that live in rural areas that really don't have access to any other kind of broadband in their area. All right, let's go ahead, and now we are going to talk about two kinds of wireless system. First, we have the mobile wireless. Mobile wireless is offered by wireless telephony companies, and it employs 3G and increasingly 4G networks. Now, the third generation networks generally use evolution or data optimize, the EVDO, or even high-speed uplink packet access, the HSUPA. ITM Advanced mobile wireless networks and technologies have agreed specifications from the International Telecommunication Union that were sanctioned in January of 2012. Now here, we're going to see 4G mobile broadband that is literally 100 times faster than today's 3G smartphones. So the network of the future is going to be a speedy one for sure. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. We're going to talk about fixed wireless. Fixed wireless, or Wi-Fi. Now, this uses a group of standards in the IEEE 802.11 group to provide short-range access of about 100 to 300 feet. And then also, we have another type of fixed, which is called WiMAX, so Worldwide Interoperability for Microwave Access. And here we see a group of standards in the IEEE 802.16 group being used, with a fixed point to multi-point, which can give you 30 miles of broadband coverage, or a mobile point of about 3 to 10 miles of broadband coverage. And the last type of technology is broadband over power line, the BPL. Now this is considered to be a pretty flawed technology just because it has a susceptibility to interference from radio frequencies and other broadband services. This really causing this type of technology to lose its appeal, and it really isn't being utilized today. We're seeing more of the other kinds of technologies being used. Alright, so let's move on. We're going to talk about home networks. Home networks of this type have been primarily found in sizable organizations like businesses, offices, schools in the past. But now with technology, we're seeing that more and more households can have this sort of stuff going on, which is really incredible if you think about it. Now here we can see that home networks have made their debut after the technological industry took off with broadband access, multiple computer households, and new computer devices and services. Home networks make possible sending files from your computer to a television on different sides of your home, or even audio files to a stereo receiver. We can also print out documents from a personal device like a mobile phone or tablet, as well as a bunch of other great things that are going to be happening in the future, where we'll literally be able to hook up every appliance in our home and we can control it from almost anywhere on the planet. Okay, so let's move on. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go ahead. I forgot something on this slide. Here, okay, so the home network, how it actually works is it splits the incoming internet signal and sends it through a wired or wireless connection to other equipment in the home. So your computers, your mobile devices, televisions, DVD players, all of that kind of stuff. All right, and now we're moving on, wired networks. Now, wired networks are the traditional networks that use that Ethernet internet cable, and they transmit a data rate of about 10 millibytes per second. They also have the gigabit Ethernet, which is more found in businesses, and it's super fast with 1 gigabyte per second of transmission rate. Now, in order to direct data, the network must have a server, a hub, and a router where everything is connected. And where we find that this network offers a faster speed, it comes with a little more expense and a nature of complication to which those who build and maintain these sorts of networks have an advantage over the average user. So the next slide, slide 18, a little more about wired networks. Most of the time these wired networks use phone lines as they are ideal. There's no new wires to put up, and the technology uses a frequency division multiplexing, or an FDM, to allow data to travel through the phone line without interference with regular phone calls and DSL service by assigning each service to a different frequency. Here, speed can be an issue. Data rates generally don't exceed 350 kilobytes per second, and unfortunately homes with super old wiring will be lucky to even get any broadband access at all. So this might not be ideal for every consumer, but we can see here how it has its place and its advantages. Alright, moving on to slide 19. Let's get into those wireless networks. So our most popular home network is wireless, and it's Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi uses the group, the IEEE 802.11, and that's the A, B, G, N, and AC, which were all developed at different points. The 802.11 AC is the newest, as of 2012, and it has speeds of, incredible speeds really, of 1.3 gigabytes per second. So wireless networks, they also include Bluetooth or wireless mesh technologies like the Zigbee and the Z-Wave. Now, our wireless networks, they utilize a transceiver, a combination transmitter and receiver that's connected to a wired network or gateway, generally your router, at a fixed location to deliver broadband to all your different networks. All right, one more slide here on wireless networks next. We're going to talk a little more about Bluetooth. So Bluetooth was developed for short-range communication at a data rate of up to 3 megabytes per second in comparison to Wi-Fi that can transmit up to 140 megabytes per second for up to 150 feet. So Bluetooth doesn't transmit as far, only about up to 10 meters. The newest edition of Bluetooth, which is Bluetooth 4.0, is backwards compatible. And what's nice about this technology is it means that there's no communication issues between old and new devices. So as the technology keeps updating and getting better, your old devices can still work with this stuff too. And it also requires very little energy to run. So the mesh technology is Zigbee. Now this runs on the group, the IEEE 802.15.4, along with Bluetooth, as a technology for wireless personal area networks, or WPANs. This uses the 2.4 gigahertz radio frequency to deliver data to numerous home and commercial devices. So these are the little devices that you see people wearing in their ears and whatnot, hands-free devices. Okay, so let's move on. The next slide, we're going to get into residential gateways, also known as a broadband router. This device allows users on a home network to share access to their broadband connection, and it routes different signals to appropriate devices. The RG Group, a consortium of companies and research groups interested in the residential gateway concept, define residential gateway as a single, intelligent, standardized, and flexible network interface that receives communication signals from various external networks and delivers the signal to specific consumer devices through in-home networks. So moving on to the next slide, let's talk about how these things can work together, the home network and the residential gateway. So innovations have made it possible to access computer devices through a home network in the same way you would access the internet. TV and Blu-ray, DVD players have hardware for streaming content, and cell phone technology can be used to access home networks remotely. The ability to access the internet with multiple computers at the same time is possible by creating a virtual IP address for each computer. So let's go ahead and take on the next slide, 23. There are two necessary developments in order for this home network and this residential gateway to work together here. So the appropriate devices have to be configured to connect to one or more of the different home networking topologies, as well as the software, including the user interfaces and control modules, need to be created and installed so that all of your different devices can communicate effectively with one another. And here we have a little diagram which shows some of the ways in which this can happen. And in the future, more and more, we're going to see that every appliance in our home is going to be able to link up to this system, which is very exciting. So we'll basically be able to monitor our homes and our businesses and do things to make sure that the atmosphere is right or the security is okay from virtually anywhere in the world. Let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. The National Broadband Plan. The National Broadband Plan was passed in March 16th of 2010 by the Federal Communications Commission. Now, the U.S. government has influence over broadband in four main ways. The first is by creating policies that ensure robust competition among players. The second is by ensuring sufficient allocation and management of broadband assets. The third is to reform current service procedures that will support the launching of broadband in less affluent areas, also ensuring that all low-income Americans have physical and financial access to broadband technology. And fourth, by reforming laws and policies to maximize broadband usage in public education and healthcare, areas that traditionally have been primarily overseen by the government. Now, the National Broadband Plan is comprised of 6 primary goals. Now, the first goal of the broadband plan is at least 100 million U.S. homes should have affordable access to actual download speeds of at least 100 megabits per second and actual upload speeds of at least 50 megabits per second. The second goal, the U.S. should lead the world in mobile innovation with the fastest and most extensive wireless networks of any nation. The third goal, every American should have affordable access to robust broadband service and the means and skills to subscribe if they choose. The fourth goal, every community should have affordable access to at least 1 gigabyte per second broadband service to anchor institutions such as schools, hospitals, and government buildings. The fifth goal is to ensure the safety of Americans. Every first responder should have access to nationwide public safety wireless network. And the sixth goal, to ensure that America leads in the clean energy economy. Every American should be able to use broadband and track and manage their real-time energy consumption. So let's move on to the next slide. Slide 26, we're going to talk about net neutrality. So currently, internet providers can block or prioritize access to web content, which has brought up some censorship issues in the past. On April 6 of 2010, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia ruled that the FCC only has limited power over the web traffic under current law. As such, the FCC cannot tell ISPs to provide equal access to all web content. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, recent developments. We're going to talk a little bit about white space here. Now, unused space that is located between frequencies, this is what we call white space. And the Office of Engineering and Technology, the OET, approved white space's database system in December of 2011 that will ultimately expand broadband access. Okay, so moving on the next slide, we're getting through it here. The current status. The OECD currently ranks the U.S. 15th in the world. The United States has the most broadband subscribers of any country in the world. Korea and Japan have the most numerous fiber connections. Approximately 309 million people worldwide subscribe to some type of broadband service. So here on this slide, I've included some of our mobile broadband penetration numbers. And here you can see Singapore is leading. And then here we are over all the way to the right for the United States. And this is just the top 10 countries here. All right, so moving on to the next slide, slide 29, factors to watch. In the future, home networking will include all home appliances, as I've already said, and traditional electronic devices. The system will also support telemedicine and teletherapy processes. So exciting things to look forward in the future. Speeds are going to continue to increase. The 4G LTE networks are becoming more prevalent, and as 4G reaches 100 millibytes per second down and 50 millibytes per second up, consumers can actually expect speeds that will be more about 5 to 12 millibytes per second down and 2 to 5 millibytes per second up. Spectrum options. Given that the analog to digital transition was only completed as of mid-2009, there has been relatively little time for broadcasters to fully utilize their spectrum space. So we're going to see more and more of the spectrum space being taken up and more stuff being offered to us as consumers. We're also going to see expanded coverage areas. So wireless coverage areas could expand as white space databases begin being created after the FCC approved them, creating wholesale broadband networks. Companies who produce mobile devices, apps, and games have an opportunity through this avenue to interface with a nationwide 4G LTE long-term evolution network without having to build the infrastructure or having the contractually link, thus limiting potential reach to an existing service provider such as AT&T and Verizon. So instead of being, stuck in one area, your coverage areas will essentially go any place that you already bring your cell phone. So next, let's talk about usage-based pricing. We're going to see more of this in the future, and this is pretty much a pay less for an option that offers less data and generally gives you about 5 gigabytes as your monthly cap. Health and education. Ultimately, broadband coverage is a necessity, not a luxury. It's necessary to ensure quality education and help facilitate quality health care, and that's definitely becoming more prevalent, and it's a truth today, so we're going to see more and more of that in the future. So last, I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit about sustainability. So moving on to our next slide, sustainability. It makes it easier for employees to telecommute, saving fuel costs and reducing CO2 emissions. It lowers costs and provides easier access to education and business services. It replaces physical goods with virtual goods, reducing energy consumption and CO2 output. And according to Broadband for America, e-commerce has the potential to reduce air pollution by 36% and requires 16% less energy than conventional shopping. Technology can be improved for the control of home appliances, heating, cooling systems, sprinkler systems, and more. According to the FCC's National Broadband Plan, consumers who can easily monitor their own consumption are more likely to modify their usage, thus eliminating or at least reducing waste. And last, the smart grid technology. This relies on high-speed data transmissions, significantly reducing energy use. They can incorporate energy from a variety of sources: wind, solar, hydroelectric, and it's going to be the technology of the future. So thank you for bearing with me through chapter 23 here, and I want to close with our discussion board question. My question, class, is what kind of broadband do you currently use, and what would be some of the features that you would like to see? What would best serve you for your dream home network of the future? I look forward to reading your responses, and I hope everyone is having a blessed weekend.